Hey guys, I'm the Lockpicking Patrolman, and I'm back with part 2 of some quick tensioning tips. Earlier today, I was on the lockpicking subreddit, and I saw a post where a fellow picker was having some trouble with an ABUS. Now, granted, his ABUS, I believe, was one of these, the 5550s, and it had a sawtooth bitting, kind of like this one. But I wanted to give some tips on tensioning these, and I know they're tensioning videos, especially for picking spool pins, like what are common in ABUS locks. I know those videos are a dime a dozen, but I wanted to give my approach on it, just to lend some, additional perspective. I've got an ABUS 8345 clamped up here in the vise, and it has the 300 core, which is the Schlage. And this is what I've got it keyed up to. You can see it's fairly flat bitting. Goes in, works perfect, comes right out. So what we're going to do is we're going to use top of the keyway tension. When picking spool pins, especially in ABUS locks, I've found that top of the keyway is the absolute best way to learn. And that is simply because it gives you more control over this keyway and gives you better feedback for counter rotation on the spools. Now, as I mentioned in my reply to that post that I saw on Reddit earlier, ABUS locks generally always have one standard pin in the front and pin number 1, and then the rest are spools. And ABUSs are great for learning spools with because they do have good tolerances and they give a lot of good feedback. So without further ado, let me explain my theory about tensioning. First thing you want to do is take your top of the keyway tensioner, put it in there, and I always like to think of my tensioner, whether it's top of the keyway or bottom of the keyway, I like to think of it as sort of the clutch, if you will. Like driving a manual transmission car, you have your clutch, which applies power, transfer from the engine, and then your gas pedal, or your pick in this case, actually maneuvers or increases the power coming out of the engine to match your tension or your clutch. So what I like to do is ease down on the clutch, do it enough to take out the spring tension in the core, because these cores are have spring tension on them. So take it out. You can see it rotates just a bit, and then give it just a tiny extra nudge. Just look up here at my thumb. You can see we take the slack out and then give it just a tad more. Then we're going to go in with our pick, and pin 1 is the binder. And in these ABUSs, I found the trick to be that if pin 1 is your first binder you feel, with it being the standard, it's almost always going to be your gateway or your gatekeeper pin. In other words, it's going to like to fall down, and once you set everything, or once you get a spool set, you might need to come back to the front and recheck that first pin. So we're going on to pin 2, which is binding, and it's giving us just a little bit of counter rotation. And if you think you may have overset it, just pull it back, recock it, give it a little more tension again. Pin 1. And if you can't get pin 1 to click into place, you can ease off your tension until you get it to go. And you can overset it, but keeping moderate tension on the core will allow you just to click it into place. Okay, so pin 2 feels okay, 3 feels okay, and by okay what I mean is that it's not giving any, it's not binding really, but let me feel, okay, pin 2, I got one click out of pin 2, and if you're not sure if you set a pin, go back and check your first pin. Okay, I hit pin 1 again, and it clicked. And we're in a tiny bit of a false set. So let's go move down the line. Okay, 3's not giving any type of feedback. Okay, there's 4. Okay, I brushed against 5 and we had a little turn on the core. So let me go back through, recheck again. 1, 2, they're still set. Okay, 3. Okay, there. As I push up on 3, you can see that the core wants to turn backwards. So when it wants to turn backwards, we're going to ease off of our tension up here. Sort of let out on the clutch a little bit. Let it snap into place, and then we go back down into our false set. So let's check pin 1. Still set. 2 is still set. 3 is still set. Okay, 4. When I brushed against 4, the core turned a little bit, and I could feel it sort of snap loose, so to speak. And if I push on a little bit harder, it wants to turn the core back the other direction. So we let out on the clutch just a little bit till it snaps up, and then we push the clutch back in. We may need to set pin 1 again. So we feel back here. There's pin 1, and it has dropped down, so I'm going to nudge it back up into place. Okay, there we go. And I eased off the tension just enough to get pin 1 set, and we still feel 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's go back here to 5. Okay. I think I might have dropped 1 or 2. Okay, there was a click. I think that was actually 2 we felt click. Okay. 2 is set. Now back to 1. Okay, we clicked 1. 1's pretty high up there. And now I believe we're on 3 again. Okay. And each time I set one of those back spools, I let off the tension just a bit, and then as soon as I feel it start to slide home, I increase it. That'll keep from dropping my other pins. Okay, pin 1 fell back down, so I reset him. And if you're not getting any feedback at all, you might just ease up, go that way, with your tension just a little bit, till you can feel something that gives you some feedback. And there was 1. I touched, I believe, 3 and 4 and nudged them into final spot, and then came back and reset 1 again. And you can see we got it open. So the name of the game is balancing your tension to where you can get decent pick pressure to lift those pins up and still feel feedback, but not give it enough looseness to where the pins are going to drop every time you set one of them. So anyway, if this helps, I'm glad. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And as always, have a great time picking and stay legal.